Give me a thumbs up when we're there, Jane.
Okay.
Welcome, Paul.
Hello.
Hey, welcome. Good to have you on. We're going to get started now. It's noon. I'm going to invite you to go on mute until you're ready to share. Sound good?
Yeah.
All right, great. We'll be in touch. So this is Career Lab Wednesday. We are here every Wednesday, noon to 1 Central Time. And we have been tracking along with Drew Allison, who has been gracious enough to join in and share his journey with us. So we're going to hear from him in a little bit here, but I want to set some context for everybody. There's a few ways that you can engage. We love it when you jump in directly on Zoom. That way we can work with you one-to-one. If that doesn't work for you, you can always view in through LinkedIn Live and on YouTube. And if you have questions, type your questions into the comment section on YouTube or LinkedIn Live, and Jane will get those over to us. We'll do our best job to answer those. And welcome, Rhonda. Welcome back. Good to see you. Mike, welcome. Good to have you on. And the way that we approach career is we see it as a pathway for you to reach your potential. And when going into interviews and working in your job that way, it's a different come from. It's a different context for you. And so I just want to name that up front. We always do it. It shifts the way that we look from it. We move from a scarcity mindset of, oh, this is something I have to do, or, oh, how do I prove myself, towards a mindset of, wow, how is this going to help me learn and grow? How is this going to help me become who I can become? And it's a very different framework than certainly different than what I grew up with. And so I wanted to name that. Again, few ways for you to participate. We love it when you jump in on Zoom. We can work with you directly that way. Be thinking about what questions you have. There's no question too small, no question too big. We've got folks who have joined in over the course of several months who are working on developing themselves, developing an aspect of themselves in their career, and using this space to do that. And we've got folks who have one quick question, something that they're working out. They just want to know about how to negotiate or whatever it is. So no question too small, no question too big. Our job here is to serve you in coming up with creative solutions that you're working on. And all that being said, Drew, Allison, I want to invite you to share with us, catch folks up. I think we've got some new people on. Catch us up on your journey since you started joining in here in Career Lab, and then bring us up to current date. And I think you've got an interesting story to share from this past week as well, as you were talking to me earlier.
Absolutely, George. Thanks so much. Appreciate you having me back, and excited to be here. It's good to see some familiar and new faces. If you're hearing my story for the first time, I've been in sales my entire career. I've been selling a variety of things in a variety of industries. And most recently, I've been in the insurance industry, personal lines insurance. And I was the vice president of personal lines insurance for a large brokerage. And I found out just before Christmas that my position was being eliminated due to budgetary cuts. And it was a real gut punch. It was really, I couldn't believe it. I was very taken aback. There's a part of me that always expects the unexpected. So it wasn't, 100% shock, but it was really, it was a lot to take in. And when I found out, my first instinct, and this is a new instinct for me, something I've developed over the course of the past year, is who can I rely on? Who can I tell this to? Who can help me? I don't need to do this alone. And I started reaching out to some coaches and some mentors and some friends. And we're talking like right away, minutes after I found out. And one of those outreaches was to George here, because I knew about this community and I wanted the support of this community to figure out what my next career move was and where I was going to land and how I was going to get there. And so I've been on this journey about 6 weeks now, and I've done a variety of things. And my first goal was to reach out to everybody I had a personal connection with on LinkedIn that I thought could help me and be supportive. I was about 70. I've got about 900 connections on LinkedIn. About 70 of them, I thought these are some really good people to contact right away. So I cleaned up my resume. I got some feedback on it. I started sending those messages. And then I really started applying for jobs and getting my name and getting my resume out there to as many openings as I could in the sales, leadership, and business development roles in a variety of industries. And I've being in sales, I've always had a very rigorous pipeline that I've followed, where I have certain activity goals every single week to make sure I hit my numbers. And I've been treating this job search a lot like a sales pipeline. So my activity has been applying to at least 15 jobs a week, to having 3 first-round interviews or discovery calls a week, and 1 second-round interview or interview with a decision maker each week. And for the most part, I've been pretty good. I've hit those numbers. I've exceeded them some weeks, fell a little short here and there. But overall, that having those numbers was the first step in holding myself accountable. The second step was continuing to get support from my network. So showing up here every single Wednesday and telling my story and being vulnerable. Telling one of my sales coaches, hey, I'm going to send you an activity tracker twice a week to show. So I really am showing myself what I'm doing. And I need you to kind of listen. And she's been amazing. She's offered so much great feedback and support and affirmation at a time when there hasn't been a lot of consistency. The days are starting to look a little different. I don't have the structure of a work day. Today is actually my last day officially at my company. And so starting tomorrow, is going to be the first time in 23 years that I am involuntarily unemployed. And that's a big thing for me. I've identified as a professional, and I've identified with my career for much of my adult life. And so this is all very, very new. Lots of fear, lots of hurt that creeps in with things like these. But the system that I was talking about, the 15 applications, the 3 interviews, the 1 heavy interview, this is these are the muscles and the support I have to prevent me from falling behind, because I've got a goal. I've got a goal to hit. I need to make money. I need to figure out how I'm going to support my family in the long term. I've got a nest egg in the short term. So we're not talking like dire straits, but I put those constraints on myself because I work better under a little bit of pressure. And so I've been really heavily interviewing and networking. I've been more and more assertive with my networking asks. At the beginning of my journey, it was very much like, hey, I found myself in the job market. If you happen to know somebody, I'd love the opportunity to get to know them. Whereas now I'm much more concrete, much more deliberate. George, I'm looking for sales leadership and business development positions. Are there 2 people that you know in your life that I could have a worthwhile conversation with? Doesn't matter if they're hiring or not. Just want to learn about them and their business. And that ask has really opened up a lot of interesting doors. And I'm talking to a lot of different people about different things. And I'm getting to that point in the process where offers are starting to come in. And, I think this is a great kind of progression of our topics here, is that when offers come in, how do I determine whether or not they're the right fit? What do I do to say, okay, this is the job for me. I want to stop my job search and put all my eggs in this basket, or do I want to pass and wait for something else? So it's and I think this is a really awesome question, because there's not a black and white answer, and it's a very it's going to be a personalized response for every single person, and a lot of it has to do with what's important to me. What do I value? How do I want to be spending my time? Who do I want to be spending my time with? And what company do I want to align my personal brand with? And those questions, sometimes the answers are contradictory. So the offer that I received at the end of last week was to become a financial advisor for a top financial firm in the U.S. And the job was to generate my own book of business, utilizing my own leads and my own pipeline, and eventually move into a management and supervision role within the first 2 to 3 years. That was really going to be my goal, was to take my sales experience and be able to train and develop new salespeople in a new industry after I proved myself. And when I got the offer, I started collecting data about it, because, and if you've been here for a couple of weeks, I am all about data. I love a good spreadsheet. I love to collect information and compare and learn about myself and learn about industries through the data that I collect. And the first piece of data I collected was my own reaction when I got the job offer. It was not excitement. It was not, oh yeah, I am super thrilled. Let's go. I am ready to do this. I'll start tomorrow. It was trepidation. It was fear. It was the opposite of excitement. And fear is a good thing. I think wherever I end up, I know there's going to be a bit of fear about it, but this fear felt different. And what I realized is I knew exactly what my life would look like if I took this job. There would be very little surprises. And it was the fact that there were no surprises or few surprises that didn't make me excited, because I like surprises. I like when challenges pop up that I can't anticipate. And in retrospect, listening to all of the things they told me about the company, one of the things they kept saying was, we have a proven sales method, and if you follow this method, you will be successful. And that's great. That's great for a lot of people. For me, I don't like following other people's sales programs, bar none. I like to create my own. I like to be creative. I like to be in a position where there's a new pipeline that needs to be developed, and I can be the one that generates those ideas. Just kind of following a cookbook. This is why I'm terrible at baking, because I can't follow a baking recipe to save my life. But I'm pretty good at cooking when I want to be, because I like to riff, and I like to bring in new ideas. And so I decided to turn this job down at a time when I didn't have any other offers on the table. And the gentleman I was interviewing with, he's like, hey, no problem. I totally understand. Where did you decide to go? And when I told him that I hadn't figured that out yet, he was kind of shocked. He was surprised that I was backing away from this with nothing else concrete on the table. But I knew that if I took this job, I would never become happy getting good at something I didn't love. And that was really important to me, is that I want to get good at something that I really love. And so I had to make that hard decision to walk away from it. And there's a lot of other factors that kind of go into that. But George, I'd be curious to kind of hear your bottom line and see if maybe this has spawned, any questions or thoughts from anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Drew. And thank you for sharing about what I think might be going on. And some of there is from Wright Graduate University, we talk about ontological guilt and existential anxiety. And if I'm doing something simply because I want to keep things the same, and I'm going to end up feeling a lot of ontological guilt, of a guilt that I didn't reach my potential, a guilt that I didn't go for it. And we all live in that to some degree. And, so when you're talking about paying attention to your fear, now for everybody listening in, so Drew has done a year-long program in emotional intelligence. So a year ago, I don't know, Drew, if this would have been if you would have been in touch with your fear the way that you are now. It's
a good question. It's a good question. I would have been just as afraid, but I wouldn't have had any language to talk about it.
And I don't know if you would have made the sort, because you could go for following the fear out of a sense of scarcity, out of, I have to do this, otherwise I'm screwed, which doesn't feel good. There's not excitement in that. It ends up, you're going in already setting yourself up for failure with that kind of a thing. But we're not always able to make the distinction between, we want to have fear as a guide and as a friend, as something that alerts us to what we want to avoid and what we want to pay attention to. And so I think you're demonstrating that that's something that you are doing now. And I don't know if you would have a year ago or not, who knows? But I wanted to just name that for everybody listening in. So then you've got that going on. So you're identifying that, wait a minute, I want a place where I can play and where I can have a certain level of impact that in the way that I want it. And this wasn't going to be it. This wasn't going to be it. And so you're choosing something that actually seems riskier, scarier. But the sense that I get is that there's actually excitement in it, that you are not ready to close off other possibilities. And
that's exactly it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And this is a big thing when what we want people to do is to see yourself as a gift. And when you're going into a company, to be treating yourself that way, to be looking at the company and saying, is this a place that is going to be a good fit for me? And Drew, it sounds like you were in the interview process, you asked questions, and the more that you got down into it, you were like, this doesn't seem like a good fit for me. This isn't going to be a place that I want to spend a significant amount of time. And, you know, that's I applaud you for taking the risk and also doing all the hard work, knowing. So, but you also have done a lot of planning. This is important to name for everybody. In case you jumped in after Drew started sharing, Drew has been going at his job search like a job. Like this is his job is going after a job search. So he has a level of security in knowing that he's doing the right activities needed to get what he wants, needed to get what he needs. And so a lot of folks don't do enough reaching out, enough phone calls, enough meetings, have enough accountability for themselves. So you're able to kind of make this sort too, because you have a good foundation. You're doing what you need to do to get the job that you want. And a lot of folks don't do that. So I think it's important to underline that too.
And I think it's a great point, George. And the other thing I'll add is that foundation, there's nothing mystical or special about that foundation. It's very easy. There's somebody in our lives that's willing to help hold us accountable. And, at times it's been certain family members, depending on the thing, or certain friends, and then obviously, professional alignments, coaches, but it doesn't need to be like a professional coach that you pay to hold yourself accountable. It can be. And there's actually a coaching platform that I'm considering if I really want to push towards that next level of executive level experience. And you could pay a lot of money to have people coach you, but you don't have to. The value is not in someone else's expertise. The value is in giving myself space to do the work that I know I need to do. And
I got to take this moment to plug something. If you want to get good at being coached by not just a coach or a therapist or your mentor or whoever, but just by being coached by the world overall, if that's a skill you want, do the More Life training. We'll throw the link in there. It's a 2.5-day seminar that we do. Coaches come to it to do their continued education. And it really does help you. People often will say things like, geez, my family members or therapist or whoever else is out there is like, what have you done since we last met that has you so coachable and so open to feedback and so excited to try new things? So if you want a taste of that, do the More Life training. Next one's in March. And if just check it out. So because in what Drew has learned how to do is, and Drew, you knew how to do this beforehand, but I think you've deepened it. You've deepened your capacity to be able to take in feedback to know how to use coaching, to really investigate and be curious about yourself, and to be able to hear things sometimes that hurt to hear and know, oh, that hurts. That means there's truth to it. That means there's potential I have that I haven't been in the process of realizing, and my coach just pointed that out to me, or that was just pointed out to me in this interview, whatever it is. So you learn how to be present with your emotions in a way that you can gather a great deal more data.
Yeah,
So,
and I think a great follow-up to that is there's a concept called self-validated intimacy, where I am in the process of learning how to validate my own worth as opposed to asking others to do it for me. Now, I love when George tells me I do a great job. It feels great. It's awesome. But what I'm learning to do is say that it's okay if George doesn't tell me I'm doing a good job, because I know that I'm doing the best that I can with the information that I have in this moment. And where that's important in this topic is, I'm thinking about the gentleman I was interviewing with, that the head of this financial firm. And, we got relatively close during the interview process. We had 4 or 5 conversations, each over an hour. He had told me about his family. We had talked about my family. There was a moment when he was asking me about what family meant to me. And I talked about a surgery that I had about 10, 12 years ago, and how my family rallied behind me in that moment. And I even got a bit emotional, which is not something I would have expected from myself in the past. And it really resonated with him. It opened him up. So when it got to the point of me declining this offer, I wasn't just saying no to a job. I was telling this person that, for a variety of reasons, I don't want to hang out with you. I don't want to work with you. And that's really scary. When you develop a relationship with somebody, even if it's quickly, being able to separate and say, it's okay if this person's upset. It's okay if they're disappointed, as long as I'm validating that I know that this is the right decision for me. And, and I think that kind of trickles out when we get influenced by family members or significant others or friends who really want to push us in a certain direction because they see value in it. And that's great. I think there are times when I never would have gotten to where I was going if I wasn't pushed. But also being able to say, hey, maybe their idea of what's good for me isn't exactly what my idea is for what's good for me. And so I think that concept of self-validated intimacy really kind of creeps in nicely to this idea of deciding, what the right fit is and whether or not I should be, accepting offers.
Beautifully said, Drew. That's wonderful. Well, I want to hear from some folks and see how this is resonating with you. That's another thing about this group, is to always be listening and applying whatever anybody's working on to yourself. That's one of the great ways to use coaching. So there's a few ways to engage. Love it when you jump in on Zoom. We can work with you directly. If you can't do that, you can always type in questions to the comment section. It looks like Daniel Wald he's listening in, relating to what you're talking about, Drew, and is still looking to get offers. Daniel, would love to hear from you. And if you don't want to share here while we're live streaming, you can always reach out to me and set up a 15-minute call. I'll serve you as much as I can in that time, and we'll see if a coaching relationship is a good next step after that. So all that being said, I would love to hear from you, Matt, Rosa, Mike, Rhonda, Paul. How can we serve you today? What's resonating, and what are you looking for?
Sure.
Go ahead, Matt.
Sure. A lot of it is resonating for me too. A lot of it makes sense of a lot of the same feelings that Drew had are ones that I can relate to. I've been a software engineer for 25 plus years, and also never involuntarily had to be in a situation of having to look for a job, and really never have even had to interview for a job in the last 20 years. It's not that I've stayed at one place for 20 years. I haven't done that, but you work as a software engineer and you kind of build up a network of friends and colleagues, and they offer you jobs basically when they become available, and you don't have to interview very much for them or anything like that. You might have to go in and meet a person or two or something like that that you don't know, but that's been my experience for 20 years. And I've been involved with a healthcare startup for the last couple of years where the bottom basically fell out and the funding was lost, and you could see it all kind of coming to a crashing end in December. And then it really did on January 1st. And started the official job search.
Oh, Matt, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it was tough time, Christmas and holidays and all that to be dealing with it then. But yeah, it was tough at first because of what I said, because I've been spoiled for 20 years. I haven't had to go through any of this interviewing or thinking about these things, because opportunities would come and I'd either decide this is something that's going to make me happy, that's something I want to do, and go and do it, or I wouldn't. And now I'm having to do things kind of the more conventional way and apply to jobs and go through interviews, which I was terrible at interviewing at first, just because everything is these Zoom calls now and all that. And I didn't even have answers to really pretty reasonable questions, like tell me about a time when somebody was having a technical problem, and how you walked them through it, which I've done a million times over the years, but I didn't have a story like queued up and ready to go for that. So kind of like a kind of moment like that, because I was just so unused to that whole process. But in just a few weeks, got a lot better at that and a lot more comfortable on Zoom and on the phone. And you kind of build up a big base of stuff to keep notes of all these questions that you get asked and different scenarios you get put in, and sort of document. And that's what I found has helped, is to document after every single one of these, because you learn something after every single one.
Good. So you're relating a whole lot. How is it that, where's your block? What could we help you with right now?
Right now, I'm in a pretty good place. I'm in mid to late rounds of some things, not quite made it to offer yet, but I've been interviewing a lot and everything. But yeah, just the listening and everything has really helped me. Just hearing what you and Drew have been talking about is kind of helping me to think about some things, like not just putting your worth based on how it's being evaluated by whoever you're interviewing with, but kind of being more aggressive and assertive and everything. And that's something I have started to do more of lately too, is doing that. And if I haven't heard from someone, whether it's a colleague or somebody else, like, hey, what's going on with that? I haven't heard anything in a few days, and what's kind of the next steps here? And whereas the beginning of this thing, maybe I wasn't doing that, just kind of waiting around. And I'm trying to apply to a lot of things every week too, even though I think some offers are probably close, acting like they're not, and not letting that slow me down at all, and just applying for as much as I can that looks like it would be something I want, until I actually have an offer that I want to have. And that's kind of the mold I'm going to stay in. But no, just listening to this call is helping me.
Cool. Well, it looks like Rhonda's got her hand up and wants to say something.
A couple of things, actually. I wanted to go back to something that Drew said, and just not having that feeling about, I'm not sure about this company. I always feel like when I interview, not only are they interviewing me, but I'm interviewing them. So if I feel like their culture isn't a fit for me, like for me, something that's important is, like, I don't want to be expected to be online at 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. Like, I want to know it's okay if I don't log on until like 8:45 or 9, because I'm still like going through my day and my morning routine. And if I want to work until 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, that's my choice. I shouldn't be told what time I have to log in and log off. So, and being kind of put in that box. So that's something that's important to me. But I think, Matt, you're doing the right thing in that because those behavioral questions are tough. And I'm not going to lie, there have been times I've been like, blah, 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 too. Right? I'm like, I don't know what to say here.
Yeah.
But I've done this enough when I kind of do the same thing you do. Every time I finish an interview, I write down all those questions, and then I kind of scroll through my memory to match up what I've done in the past to be able to answer those questions in the future. That same question in the future, like, tell me about a time when you had to, problem solve this, or talk to a stakeholder about that. At least you've got a couple things like in the back of your mind. And not only do I write them down, but I actually type them out. Then I print it up and I kind of like review it every time I do an interview. So then that way I kind of have it in my mind and I know what to say. And the more you do it, you'll get better at it for sure.
Right.
And then you're going to go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and I did this. And then like out of nowhere, you're going to remember another time that you can add, that you had that same experience. You can kind of add that to your, your list of what is it? I want like experiences.
Right. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Some of these questions, they have obvious answers and you've done it, but you just
Yeah,
not
I
ready
know.
with that answer. But
And sometimes
yeah,
your nerves get the best of you too. I've done that where I'm like, oh, Rhonda, be quiet. You're babbling. Like, just cut it off.
yeah. Oh
Is
yeah.
that-
I've been there before
that
too.
learning-
Yeah. Less is more kind of moments, and
Learning
can't help but you just keep
to
going.
share in a bottom line way is
Yeah.
a serious skill. And
Yeah.
and especially if I haven't been interviewing for a long time, I'm out of practice. I'm out of practice with that. And that's a real thing to learn how to do so that I can say what I need to say without trying to sell myself,
Right.
without rambling on. Because and the other thing I wanted to underline, and thank you, Rhonda, for sharing how you relate. And Matt, what you were saying about when you're interviewing and rambling on, and if you can bottom line and then ask them a question about the position. Okay, yeah, so you're experimenting with that because you're interviewing them, and that's going to give them more security that you know what's going on there and that you can relate. And we often talk about that there's two things that people are asking, and Drew, you alluded to these, is one is do you get shit done? And the other one is, do they want to work with you?
Right.
And you're following up with people and being more aggressive, I think is what you said. We've talked about that before, about how that's often important because people who are hiring often suck at hiring. And they don't have great processes, and they don't always know what they're doing. And so you can look at it as you doing them a favor, that you're following up and reminding them that they have some to-dos that would really help them, like get back to you. And so I wanted to say that too for everybody who's listening in, to underline some of what you're sharing about, to really take ownership of the process. And I don't know, I don't have exact numbers on these, but at the More Life training, we always do personality assessments, and people who are more avoidant and a little more hesitant are the majority. So the majority of us are going to tend to not be as aggressive and upfront as we could be, and as people would find totally acceptable. So that I wanted to share that piece too.
No, I agree. I haven't had anybody say, "What are you doing following up with me?" I haven't had that happen. Nobody's ever done that. So yeah, I think you're right. The more the merrier of doing that, and it might even make you stand out a little. Hey, this guy really wants this job, or is really interested in this. He's following up on it.
Yeah. Well, sweet. Well, thank you. So I'm going to do a quick room reset, and hopefully I would love to hear from other people how you're relating. This is Career Lab Wednesday, every Wednesday, noon to 1 p.m. Central. We're here to serve you. We have different topics each week, but really our job is to answer questions that you have to support you in the journey that you're on. Sometimes it's just connecting here and listening, like what Matt was sharing about. Sometimes that's really helpful because you can see other people working on what you're working on. So that being said, curious, Mike, is there anything that you'd like to share? Anything that you need support on?
I'm not sure on the support piece just yet, but just listening and absorbing the information, the feedback from others here has been very helpful. Very, very familiar responses that I would have. I think, I am not rushing back into the marketplace, but just based on circumstances and still staying relevant, I've been trying to get back into the game and really been more selective in the jobs I go for. But I can tell you, it's one thing to be on the interviewer side of the table and quite another to be interviewed. And I'm taking to heart a lot of the similar experiences. For example, I spend a whole afternoon and probably about 6 or 7 hours going through 12 great examples of, relevant things that happen across different categories of my career because, in the moment I just did them, right? And you did them as a leader. But in my world, I don't really take time to inventory all the things I've done. Even though you put it on a resume, there's a lot of substance and detail behind them that are going to be, going to be part of the decision-making process where somebody's interviewing you. So I just now have gotten into the interview world, got solicitations from a few folks, did one formal full interview for an executive job that I didn't get, but learned a lot from the process, building confidence and, staying in it. And I think there's a lot to be said from kind of the initial part of this call, which is, pick a job and take a job that makes sense for you and it's a good fit for you. And unless you're in a situation where, there's a urgent or dire need for financial, safety or security, then, be more confident and, pick a job or interview for a job that makes more sense for, your capabilities and your interests.
And Mike, what are you looking at? What's your industry?
Well, I'm from telecom, but I'm pretty universal. I'm more of a jack of all trades, but more in the sales orientation, telecommunications history, looking in probably a mid-cap C-suite somewhere or a VP role. So I'm applying, so I left corporate America after 20 years, semi-voluntarily, I guess, but I think somebody else had spoken. I can't see the names because I'm on my phone, but somebody else had spoken about, hey, I really haven't had to do a formal interview in 20 years. Usually somebody picks up the phone and taps you on the shoulder. And, I'm in that same world. I've got a couple of folks who reached out to me and said they'd love to have me consult. And somebody else says, hey, I'm creating a job that I think might be a good fit for you. But, until you have that, bird in the hand, it's pretty, I figure it's being practical and thoughtful to consider other options. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. And where are you located?
I'm between Chicago and Orlando.
Okay.
I wish I could say I was in Orlando today. It's a little cold in Chicago, but yeah, I've been pretty flexible. So I've actually looked at a job and other jobs in the Midwest and possibly in other parts of Florida.
Okay. Oh, cool. Thanks for joining in.
Yeah, thanks for putting this on. It's great to listen in.
There were a couple things Matt said that I'd love to comment on, George, if we have a second.
Oh, yeah.
So it was, it's interesting. You mentioned being on the other side of the table, and those of us that have interviewed in the past, that have interviewed others, that was part of our job, whether it was recruiting or we were just on a team that had to hire. It's always that much more frustrating when we're being interviewed by somebody and they're not doing a great job. And like you have to kind of, and like you're wondering where the thread is and the narrative of the questions and the relevance, and you're sort of like, well, kind of you're sort of nitpicking while you're also trying to build rapport and have good answers at the same time. And I just wanted to point out that because that, like for me, that turns into anger really quick. Like I could interview let me just record myself interviewing myself and we can submit it to the boss. Like that would be great. And and it's in that frustration. And what I often lose is the context of this is a learning experience for this person as well. And if I have the opportunity to help them by maybe offering up a question I would like to answer, or I think Matt said it and George, like asking good questions at the end of my answers to help them see maybe what some really relevant questions would be that they haven't thought of. And I can say that as somebody who has done a tremendous amount of interviewing, there was a 3-month period where I conducted 15 interviews a week for 3 months straight. It's what people tell me is important. The questions that they ask me are twice as important. Mm-hmm. I've never hired somebody that's never asked me a question in an interview. And they say, no, I'm good. I understand it all. It's like, you don't understand the purpose of the question because you don't show your expertise by the knowledge that you have. you really show it through the questions that you ask and the intelligence of the inquiry. And Mike, I think you kind of touched on that nicely. It's just that sort of the importance of showing your expertise, but not in like a show-offy way or just a laundry list of resume bullet points, but actually kind of, you know, turning it into like a thoughtful engagement, and being able to take the interviewer out of their normal script can be a great way to be remembered. You know, asking them a question that really gives them pause and gives them a chance to answer. They're going to, you know, if they're doing 15 interviews a week, they're going to remember the ones where they got pushed off script much more so than the ones that they, you know, where somebody just, you know, kind of blanketly answered the questions as they came along. So just a couple thoughts on that.
That's
Great point.
well said, Drew. Well said. Way to circle back in there and walk us through that. I was really picturing that happening.
Yeah, I saw a YouTube video from kind of an executive recruiter who puts out all these great videos on how to handle different scenarios. And he said the best interviews that he's ever been on, when he's on the side of the table doing the interview, are the ones where he feels like he's being put into a corner and he's being driven with questions and he's being interviewed. He says those are the ones that mostly get hired, or the ones that end up that way. So it's not something you can necessarily go into an interview and make that happen, but it does kind of organically happen sometimes.
Some ways to set that up is to look at what the company needs and why the position is there.
Right.
Something's not working. There's a reason that there's a job opening. And I'm to be skeptical about what they think they need. There's a good chance that what they think they need isn't even it. There was one guy that I shared about before who he interviewed so well that he interviewed himself out of a job because they realized that the position they had open wasn't what they needed. So they're like, well, we would hire you, except you just proved that we got this all wrong. So we'll introduce you to some people that we think you might be a good fit with. So you want to go in really skeptical of you know what their thoughts are and how they see the organization. That you know that can be a helpful framework to go in on these.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's
Jordan,
always go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, it may seem very elementary, and for this audience here, I'm betting everybody does it, but like, there's nothing better than getting an inside track on at least how the interviewers or the hiring manager perceive. So use your link. So I used LinkedIn and I connected. I had a mutual friend with somebody who was a VP on this other leadership team, and I could call them and, hey, give me the lowdown. Like, what's happening there? What's the reason for the vacancy? And they may give you all or some of the answers, but you learn a lot, and it helps you, you know, define your history towards, you know, at least, you know, George, yeah, it may be true that they may not know what they need, but at least towards what they expect that they need or they suspect they need, you can align your history accordingly. And it's, and then I think it was Drew, you raised a really good point. Is I never really in my prior, like when I interviewed 20 years ago, I never thought about, oh, what questions I asked. I was always probably putting fluff, but you can hit some pinpointed questions that really do two things. One, they show you've done your research, and two, that you know you're taking the deliberation seriously. And if I come on board, I'm somebody that's gonna be thoughtful. So I think some really good ideas been raised.
This is great. I actually want to. We might dig in a little bit here because I got a private message about somebody naming that they've gone through Indeed, ZipRecruiter for over a year, no luck, that it's not going well. And it might be really helpful for people to hear some of the process of how you get in a company, of how you use what you were just mentioning, Mike, about connecting on LinkedIn to people there. Drew, you've talked about this earlier. I think it might be good to share a little bit about this process of how you get in deeper into a company, even before the first interview.
Yeah, you know, there's two parts to that question. You know, there's the process of figuring out who to talk to, and then there's what you're going to say. And I think both are equally as relevant. I've thought a lot about both recently because figuring out who to talk to, like Mike alluded to, isn't as difficult as it used to be because of LinkedIn, and also, especially depending on the size of the company, often the company website will have key staff members listed and with little bios. And if it's a smaller, mid-sized to small company, you can probably find a human resources or recruiting manager on the info page of the website. And I've had really good luck with that in the past. And if it's a job that I'm really excited about, I saved the CEO or the president's number as well. And there was an experience I had years ago when I was in the retail industry where a gentleman came in and he did some shopping at my store. And then I later found out that he was a VP for a company that was opening a store down the street. And I was like, okay, that's kind of a bit of an opportunity. And because I had a little bit of rapport with him, when I applied for that job and didn't get it, I reached out to him and just told him how much I appreciated the opportunity to do it and continued that rapport. And it eventually led to another job when he was working at another company about a year and a half later. So it's part of this outreach that we do before interviews or happenstance or however we interact with these people is to lay seeds for future engagement, because it may not happen in the moment, but it's laying the seeds for what could potentially happen later on. And I think that that really comes down to what you say and how you say it once you've identified the person that you are that you need to reach out to. And the best way that I do to figure that out is I look deeper into their LinkedIn history to see where did they go to school? Where did they grow up? What part of the country are they in? What are, if they have a Facebook or Instagram, what types of things do they do that could clue me into what kind of language they like to use? Because if I can tailor my language to somebody who's more energetic and outgoing like George is, or somebody who's a little bit more reserved and analytical, or somebody that's really like a high thinker, kind of big ideas, low detail, there's different ways that I tailor my language to try to really connect with people through the context clues of what I find online. And so I often spend a lot of time kind of crafting the right LinkedIn message and the right email to really increase the chance of it making an impact on somebody. And it doesn't have to be super complicated, but even just knowing when to, like, okay, this person seems really high energy, I'm going to use an exclamation point as opposed to a period. These little things matter, because when I get an email, I want to be able to see myself, and as I want to look at that person and go, okay, we're speaking the same language, and things like punctuation and even like emojis and other things. There's all sorts of ways that we can adjust our personal brand to connect well with the people that we're talking to.
That is so true, Drew. I have developed a discipline of going back through emails and text messages and deleting exclamation marks, because I'm like, wait, I'm sending this to an analytical type. Like, this is just going to be annoying to them.
Spot on.
I love that you're saying that.
Yeah, or like, am I talking to somebody in Gen Z? Like, I might use an emoji, where if I'm talking to somebody in like my age, I might use an emoticon instead, like to kind of show a little like antique-y kind of vibe, a little throwback. Like these things matter in the way that we build rapport with people. And I think that when we're reaching out to people we've never met before, who potentially hold our future in their hands, that person that sent you that direct message, that's a scary proposition. And my biggest, for me, it was lining up about 5 or 6 of those LinkedIn messages or emails and knocking them all out in one shot, and just taking 30 minutes and doing it over and over 5, 6, 7 times. And then it was amazing how quickly I got comfortable with it. But that repetition of a new activity is something we don't often think about. Matt was talking about it earlier. Like, when you don't interview for 20 years, you got to get back in the process. You got to get used to talking to yourself, selling yourself, asking good questions, getting used to the new technologies, reaching out to people that you don't know. is the, it's the exact same thing. And then because you don't know them, their responsibility to respond to you is very low. And so just know going into it, you will receive less responses than you think you will. I've applied for 15 jobs a week for 6 weeks. I've sent a personalized message to a recruiter or a hiring manager or a C-suite person at nearly every company that I've applied to. I've probably heard back from 6 or 7. Like it's a low return rate, but when it hits, and it's really valuable. And it's something that I coach my sales producers on a lot. If you can find a phone number and even give this person a call, the chance of them answering is pretty low. But odds are the phone, even if it's a corporate phone number, it's being forwarded to their cell phone. You've got the missed call, which is one time they see your phone number or your name. They've got the voicemail if they listen to it, and they've got the transcribed voicemail that gets texted to them. So it's in that one outreach, you actually are hitting people in 3 different ways and maximizing the opportunity. So it's not about getting somebody. People are like, oh, no one picks up the phone. Nobody likes to talk on the phone. It's not about that. It's about getting your name in front of them and being able to leave a really concise, coherent voicemail that transcribes really nicely into a text message, because all the phones do that now. And you cut out the ums and the ahs and all the other stuff, and you make it really tight, really concise. I've had some really good luck with outreach like that, as opposed to just a LinkedIn message or an email.
Well, shoot, you just, I don't want to look at my ums, Drew. But you just made a really good point for me continuing to get better at my speech. So thank you very much. I've been relying on sending text messages, but you're right that I call and then I don't leave a voicemail. I just send a text message. But I think there's value in leaving a good voicemail and getting good at that. So I guess maybe I'll start. I will work on that. Thank you.
Love it.
Damn technology. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, we've got a few minutes left, but I want to throw this in here too from Angelina. She wants to know about if you need a cover letter. So first question, Drew's nodding his head yes.
Not in my head to the recognition of that question, because I think it's a really, really good question. Because often when I'm applying, almost every time that I apply for a job, a cover letter is not required, but there's a spot for it. So it becomes a question, like it's not required, but do they want it? And it has been my experience that as annoying as cover letters are, and I kind of hate them like going to the dentist, they are a necessary evil. And it is a good, and I've also found that most cover letters can be satisfied with my single template that I use. And I just swap out a couple key details. I don't overthink it. I make sure that I have one in there, because the AI bots that they have reviewing these applications, even though it's not required, they may use it as a way to just filter people out right on the spot, no matter what the cover letter even says. So yeah, I would say absolutely have a template that you like, that's not too long, 2-3 paragraphs, 2 paragraphs probably, and you can just switch out company names, or maybe have 2 or 3 templates if you're doing different industries or different types of roles. And putting in the legwork up front will help with the oh shit moment when the cover letter question comes up in the application, because I've absolutely been there. And then the other part of her question, is it better to volunteer on your passions? It's a really interesting question.
The response I have for that is yes. is yes. So I'm thinking about somebody who joined in here maybe a year ago, and he was faced with, he moved because of family, And he was basically taking a pay cut though to move here, and he's a very highly skilled guy. And he joined in and was like, I just don't know if I should take this position because it's kind of like I'm volunteering for it. It's under what I pay, and I don't know that there's going to be a direct thing, but this is kind of the only thing I have here, and I like it. I like the people. So he ended up deciding that he was going to do it. And what happened is that once he was there and he worked for a little bit and they got to see what he could do, then that opened up all the doors. That got him talking to face with the people he needed to be talking to. So volunteering on your passions in kind of that way of going with something that maybe isn't the pay that you want, but there could be there's the possibility of it, kind of depending on where you're at in your career, what your needs are, all of this. I say yes. Another thing is, and this I love this this research that I learned at Graduate University when they were doing a study on teachers and burnout. Okay, especially in city schools, that's often a really challenging environment where you've got one teacher to a classroom of 30 plus kids. And that is so challenging. And how do you do it? How do you not get burnt out? So what they found was that the teachers who stopped they just did the minimum amount of time because they said, I need to rest, I need to relax, this is really hard. Those teachers burned out. And the other teachers who burned out were the ones who just went all in and worked after hours and just threw everything at it. The ones who didn't burn out were ones who went and volunteered at other organizations, because they found that most people who are teachers, they thrive on giving. But when they're giving in this one institution where they don't get the results that they want, it's incredibly fulfilling to them to go volunteer somewhere else where they can just kick ass and they get to see all of their hard work that they do in a really challenging environment. They get to see that blossom somewhere else, and that's actually rejuvenating. So yes, volunteering at something that you care about will likely nourish you a great deal and will only support you in coming up with creative solutions to whatever you're working on in your main job or whatever it is. So overall, volunteer, yes, in whatever format you're talking about, Angelina, it's probably a good idea.
And I'll just one thing on that, don't hesitate to brag about that volunteering. Get it on your resume, talk about it in an interview, because those are the differentiators that just allow you to stick in someone's mind. My 10-year career in high-end retail, where I did, regional management across the US and all sorts of wonderful things, it all started when I applied to an independent menswear store in Boston. And I had just graduated college, so I still had stuff from high school. And I had president of the breakdancing club from high school on my resume. I kind of had forgotten it was there. And to this day, this guy, Gary, who's become one of my best friends and closest mentors, he still says, the reason I hired you is because of that breakdancing thing on your resume. I was like, who is this kid? I got to know more. And sometimes it's just, it's those weird little things in your life that set you apart and get people to remember you. So don't hesitate to brag about it and talk about it. Don't just do it. Don't leave it to yourself.
Oh, beautiful. Beautifully said, Drew. And we are on time tonight. I do got to run. I have a session right now, but I want to thank you all. Drew, of course, thank you so much. It's so good having you on and sharing your journey. And Matt, great to have you here and sharing your journey as well.
Absolutely. Thank you guys too.
Keep coming back. Let us know how the journey's going.
I will.
Excellent. And Mike, great to have you also. And Rhonda, I know you had to jump off early, but just appreciate you and what you've been sharing. And so until next week, be good to yourselves, get nourishment and connection as you are out searching, And you can always find this on YouTube. It stays live there. It's easier to find there than on LinkedIn. And again, if you want to set up a time to talk with me, 15 minutes, I'll serve you as much as I can in that time, and we'll see about next steps. Go ahead and check that out. And until next week, many blessings. Thank you again. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
All right, bye-bye.